everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today with our sponsor Jody, I am going to dye some Knit Picks Full Circle Roving with dry acid dye powder. In the past, I've tried to dot some speckles onto roving, which actually resulted in some really cool subtle pastel colors once I spun the roving into yarn. But I'm not really going for a speckled look today, but I do love layering dry acid dye powders on yarn, and so I want to see what kind of layered effects we might get if I do this sort of technique onto some 100% wool roving. Full Circle Roving is 100% wool. It was a special reserve line from Knit Picks a few years ago that used basically ends of spinning, and it recycled some of this leftover wool to create this. There was a yarn line and this roving, which I think is so cool. Therefore, I believe it's listed as just wool because it's a mixture of a bunch of different wools. Full Circle Roving didn't come with a bare version, but I have over-dyed many different colorways in this, and the color Pigeon is a great one. This is sort of an oatmeal pale tan color, which has heathering in it. So when you over dye it, some of those heathered qualities remain, but then you can layer on the color and it is really, really awesome. Jody, I am super excited to play with this roving for you, and I cannot wait to see how this will turn out. I am pre-soaking the roving in some plain tap water for at least 30 minutes. It might end up being closer to an hour or two because I'm dyeing multiple projects today. I have our pre-soaked roving, still very saturated with water, and just plop it into our dedicated dye pan. The pan is cool, and I do want to arrange the roving in some kind of way in here. I haven't ever arranged roving sort of going in this kind of direction, so I thought that that would be fun. I definitely don't want to agitate things, so I want to sort of touch it as little as possible, but get it arranged in a nice way. So there's still a lot of water in the roving, but I'm going to add some more. This is 4 cups of water with 4 tablespoons of white vinegar to help sort of submerge everything here in the pan. And actually, that did a pretty nice job. I expect that this will be different when I try to dye roving with dry Kool-Aid powder. I'm not sure if we'll get penetration all the way through, but that can give a really, really cool effect when spun that I loved when I did my rainbow yarn. The colors I'm planning to play with today are Toner Black, Intense Iris, Peacock Blue, Twilight Gray, Electric Violet, and Cherry Bomb. Since I'm dealing with dry acid dye powders, I'm wearing a face mask and goggles and gloves, and all the equipment I'm using is dedicated dye equipment and is never used for food. Everything has been heated up, and I just turned the heat down to low. So now we're about to start adding dry powder onto it. And I'm still undecided if I'm hoping for uneven penetration all the way through or what. But I do have a nice slotted spoon that I can use to gently press to try to mix things up. I will be using my fingers to apply the colors onto here, and I will be going and washing my hands in between each color. Let's start with some Twilight Gray. Okay, I'm actually kind of digging this sort of speckling it on top. I've definitely dropped some over there, but letting it sort of spread. I think that this could be a really, really fun way to pattern it. All right, let's take some Cherry Bomb. Put this down over one end. Ooh. I'm loving watching the colors sort of streak out through there. That is just beautiful. Let me, after I wash my hands, zoom in on that. The Twilight blue is definitely breaking, and you can see it spreading down. I am, before we add the next color, going to press on it. I decided if this will help it sort of go through, I do want to allow that to happen. And I'm going to do the same thing over here at the cherry bomb. But maybe I will give this time to sort of settle before I add a color in between there. Okay, next I've got some electric violet right here. Ooh. This is so pretty. Oh, I love that shade of purple. Okay, wash my hands, and I'm now going to pat this down. Ooh, it looks like there's a little bit of yellow in there. The nice thing with Roving is that if you end up with some cool flecks of color, as you spin it, it'll sort of blend itself out, which I think is always really, really cool. I probably should have lined this up so things like stayed more towards the edge, but I'm digging it. I like the direction this is headed. Okay, I'm now coming in with some Peacock blue down here at our bottom end. It's kind of fun that this is like this really non-repeating kind of colorway. All right, next up I've got some Intense Iris. Eek. This container is deeper, so it's actually harder for me to reach in and grab that color. It's a little too bad that this is at the interface of the red and blue because it's going to feel very blended, but it is what it is. Okay, I'm going to press down these two colors now. Again, I have no idea how these are penetrating towards the other side, but I am enjoying these really saturated colors that I am starting with. And last up, I have some toner black, which I know has a little bit of red in it. Oh, that's a lot. It's got a little bit of red and a tiny bit of yellow in it. Okay, let's smush down this last color. I feel like this is a very, very unique kind of colorway here. Very uniquely done. I'm now very gently pressing down each of these colors. I don't want them to like blend or anything, but I would like things to try to get to the other side. I think that the camera wasn't doing this justice. These colors are deep and saturated. I might have added too much dye, which is only something to worry about because I don't want to have to do a ton of rinsing. But wow, I am really, really enjoying this. I am enjoying the way that these colors are playing together, and just the intensity of them. I think that this could turn into something really, really amazing. There is still so much color in here, like an unbelievable amount of color. I am going to turn this basically as low as the burners will go, leave this here for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and see where we are. 20 minutes later, and I have a feeling, okay, I still see some blue, but it's starting to clear. I did check in. Okay, certainly in the middle areas, things are the most clear, whereas on some of these ends, we see more. But actually, like if I open that up, you can see the colors come through. So maybe what I need, ooh, I see some white, ooh, so maybe I just need to like go through, whoa, did you see that? Oh, cool, cool. There's definitely some white patches behind. Yeah, just trying to, you know, yarn mop situation, because I feel like a lot of this leftover color is like on these ends. I'm gonna, while I'm doing this, pump up the heat a bit. I've kept the heat fun overall, really low. Yeah, I think this is pretty good. I do think I probably should add some more water and vinegar to here. So okay, I'm gonna turn the heat back down to low. Here is 4 cups of water plus 8 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'm just sort of pouring this mostly around the edges. But we are increasing the total volume of water. And what this is letting the fiber do now is, you can see the fiber plumped up, so it's not just like below it, but this will allow us to dissolve any additional powders that might be on top, and hopefully start to absorb some more of this color. Because who knows if there's just like some powder on top. So actually, instead of the spoon, I think I will use our handy slotted spoon. Just gently press everywhere. I'm really excited. I know some of these light patches, which are now absorbing some of this extra color, but I think that that's cool and something that could definitely be done intentionally. I think that if this fiber were for me, then I wouldn't worry too much about the bleeding. I could always wash it more after I spun it. But this roving is for Jody. And so I want to make our sponsor happy and thrilled with the pretty. So I have the heat on high right now. I am going to leave it on high until I start seeing little bubbles everywhere. I know that there's a couple sort of over the burners. Actually, I guess right now I can shake it a little bit to help distribute that heat. But in a minute or two, I will turn the heat back down to low, and we'll come back in a total of 20 minutes and see where we are. 20 minutes later, and our color has basically exhausted. I have checked on this a few times. I think the addition of more water, more vinegar helped, but I think probably the main thing was moving it a bit, so that way this tiny bit of dye that looked really intense because it was just sort of stuck in these little patches, giving it access to other fiber. And so you can see some of these patches that were white now have color on them. Giving it access to some fiber that could absorb that dye helped and was necessary. I'm now turning off the heat completely, but I'm not going to remove the roving yet. I'm going to let it cool in here until it gets to room temperature. Okay, we've got our roving in this pan. It is room temperature. I'm carefully Oh, so carefully squeezing it out and putting it into some about room temperature tap water. The water that is left in our dye bath is mostly clear, which is a very good thing here. You want to be careful. You don't want to rub the roving. That's when you could end up with some felting. But I'm just gently squeezing and letting go, so that way you can rinse it out. Yeah, there's a tiny bit of bleeding, just a hair. Honestly, not bad given how much color we put in. I'm again not running the water directly over it. I don't even think I'm gonna use soap. I don't want, soap can help agitate the fibers. This isn't a lot of bleeding, but after I'm gonna rinse it probably 3 or 4 more times, and then we're gonna put it through my Soft spin dryer to remove the excess water, so that way it will dry faster. So we'll be giving that a shot for the first time with roving. Here is my Soft spin dryer. You can see a little bit more in the reviews that I'm doing, but I am now going to spin the excess water out of this roving. All right, I'm placing this in, trying to make sure that it's balanced, grabbing the disc, sort of place over it. There we go. Okay. Whew. Now we're going to get started by pressing the lid down. And now I'm going to let it spin for a minute or 2, and then we'll go in and check the roving. Okay, now the water that comes out is a lot slower. I think I could leave it in for longer, but I am going to pop it open. We will remove the disc, and wow, there is our roving around the inside. Oh my gosh. This is awesome. Awesome. The roving feels fluffy already. I'm going to go hang this to dry. A lot of times when you hand dye roving, it gets really compressed and then comes out looking not very fluffy. But because it's had the water squeezed out of it and it's not drip dry and compressed, it already feels great. I won't know the full state of it until it is completely dry, but I'm gonna go gently hang this up, and when it's dry, I'll let you know how it turned out. The roving was so dry when it came out of the spin dryer, and it wasn't even really hanging when I put it on the drying rack. It was just sort of gently laying there. But it is so unbelievably fluffy, just straight out. It's not compressed at all. And I think that's because we spun the water out of it, and so it didn't have that weight of the water to compress it at all. And it just looks beautiful and perfect. Is this the secret to getting perfect fluffy roving without having to individually fluff it up? I don't know. Now, looking at the color, we have some places with high saturation that are, basically black, and then lower saturation, which are just a little bit darker than the natural color. When spun, some of these lighter patches will even out. But part of our experiment this time was to see, oh, there's a big, maybe I need to look inside. Huh. Is over here? Oh no. There's good color saturation there. Maybe just in a few patches where maybe things were a bit more twisted. Yeah, because some of it was twisted when it came out. So maybe in some of these patches we do have some hidden pale patches on the inside. Clearly, when dyeing roving, starting with dry acid dye powder, it's not enough to just put it on and gently press it in. If there's any twists or anything, you will get something that looks a little more tie-dyed. But the dye did go further than I expected. So I think that that is a win. Next time I might pre-soak the roving in the pan where I'm going to dye it, so that way I can really make sure that there's not any twists in the roving itself, which I think will prevent, you know, this kind of situation. But again, like, these will give some paler sections to the yarn, which I think will still be really, really beautiful. These paler patches stand out right now in the roving, but it's the beautiful thing with spinning, and that the way the colors blend together, and there could be some really cool barber pole moments. As I was putting this in the braid, I noticed this almost greenish section, which I think may have come from some of the toner black, because I know that there is some yellow in there. Jody, thank you so much for sponsoring this video and letting me experiment with dyeing roving with dry acid dye powders. I definitely want to play around with this more, and especially with some of the colors that we saw breaking. Off the top of my head, I'm not remembering exactly, but one of the purples was definitely breaking on here, and I know the toner black seems to break a little bit, and so I think that it'll just be a lot of fun to see how much breaking you can get on the roving when you're starting with the dry powders. I feel like if a color breaks while it's absorbing to roving, it'll be more likely to break when you're dip dyeing. A lot of colors will break when speckling because if they have multiple different colors in the dry mixture. But if those different colors absorb at similar rates, you might not necessarily see breaking with hand painting or dip dyeing. So I'm just really excited to explore more acid dyes because there are just so many, there are a lot more dye molecules in commercial acid dyes than there are in food coloring. There's only a handful for food coloring. So there's just so many more possibilities to be surprised by color. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you would like to learn more about sponsoring an episode of Dyepot Weekly, you can find a link in the video description to my Etsy store, which lays out all the details. As sponsors, you get to pick the yarn or roving base that I dye in the video, tell me some colors to avoid, and then I design an experiment with you in mind, and once the video is edited, I'll send you the yarn or roving that you picked out. The final results are always a surprise, which I think is a lot of fun for me and for the sponsors. You can find the link in the video description and iCard. Don't forget to subscribe, like, turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode of Dyepot Weekly or some of the other bonus episodes that I put out every month. Thank you so much for watching.